So one of the advantages of the composition camp is there's several things that you can do and try and have fun with that aren't necessarily something you have to do. I know a lot of kids really like the music from movies. I know as a piano teacher and a guitar teacher, that is one of the most requested things around. I mean, like you want to get the Lord of the Rings music in there, you have to get Star Wars in there, Charlie Brown music, all those things are super popular among kids. So I thought I would give you some tools to compose your own movie music. And you can make your own movie on this one and add that as the score. And so here's what it is. First of all, we want to get some ideas of what notes to use. And so for this one, we're going to use the D minor scale. And it looks like this: D, E, F, G, A, B flat, C sharp, and D. And then the other thing about movie music is that it's usually scored for an orchestra. And so you have a few things going on here. First of all, you have a first violin section, second violin section. Notice on this one, they are separated by an octave. So this one is on the higher D and this one's on a lower D, and they keep going up. These are all notes that are within the range of the violin. Third, you have the viola, and we haven't discussed this too much. The viola is a little bit bigger violin, and it plays in the alto clef. This is a C clef, and so the C is right on that middle line there. That's actually middle C. And so these notes are within the range of the viola. I know you're probably not too familiar with the alto clef, so I'll give you some tips on how to handle that in a second. You have the cello, which is like a small bass, and these are the notes the cello plays. And then you have the contrabass, or the string bass, and there's a lot of names for that one. Some call it the double bass, and these are the notes that they're going to play. Notice they're the same notes as the cello. The difference is the bass sounds an octave lower. So even though you were going to write this D, it's going to be the D that's way, way down here. But of course, if you write this one, they can't play that because their lowest string is the E string. And then finally, one of the cool things about movie music is how expressive it is. And one of the ways that they really build in that expression is they use a lot of percussion. And so on this one, we're going to use some timpani. Timpani are big drums that you play with a soft mallet. And it's also pitched, meaning that they have certain notes that they are playing instead of like a snare drum or even just a drum set where they are just a percussive sound. And so for this one, we're going to limit it to the D and the A. And you don't want to change all around with the timpani because you have to tune them specifically for the song and what notes are in there. And usually it's done either in a fifth or a fourth. It could be like A and D, but we'll use the low D and then the A here. And so these are your scales that you can use. Lastly, I also give you the arpeggios. And so here's the D minor arpeggio. And notice that the notes are all written out for you. So D, F, A, D, F, A. And so I did that on all the different parts of the orchestra. And an arpeggio is always a skip away, and then it goes up to an octave higher D. Then we have the G minor arpeggio, G, B flat, D, G. Then the A major arpeggio, A, C sharp, E, A. Don't need to worry about the B flat because it's in the key signature. You do need to add the sharp to the C if you're going to do a C sharp when we get to the A chord. And so those are the notes that you have to choose from. There's plenty of options for that one. And so let me show you where the score begins. It starts down here on the third page. And it starts with a little intro. I gave you kind of a template on how to do this, and then what you can do later is you can go in and you can make your own orchestra score and your own movie music. I wanted to give you some tips and some tricks on how to make it sound, well, interesting and like a movie. And so let's hear what this intro sounds like. Here we go. Cool. So that sounds hopefully pretty cool to you. Start off on a nice low ostinato here for the cello part. I have the bass notes here kind of accenting that first beat. I even have the timpani in there, helping with the rhythm as well as the lowness and the dramatic effect of it. And then I actually am going to start the melody here, and I want you to keep this note. And then it goes in here, and then you get the melody the first time. Now, I gave you the first two notes of the melody. Start that on the second violin part here and keep going with it. And there's, let's see, there's going to be 8 measures. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So go all the way to here with that first melody. And I'll show you what to do with this in a second, but here's a couple tips for doing good melodies. One of the things, notice how I started on beat 3 with a shorter note. So up here, I did a quarter note, and then I landed on a big half note on the beginning of the measure. And that's a pretty typical thing that we want to do in music. We want to have a short note lead to a long note. And if we want to emphasize beat 1 more than we want to emphasize beat 2 or 3, like we do in this piece, we want to do a longer note on beat 1, so like a half note. Or if you're doing eighth notes, you might want to do eighth quarter on beat 1. And so continue on with your melody on the second violin part here. And remember, not everyone has to play at the same time. In fact, I'm going to recommend that you leave the violin, the first violin and the viola out for right now, and I'll show you when to bring them in. The other thing too is that we have chord changes here. So it starts on a D minor chord, and then in the third measure of the melody, it goes to a G minor chord. Now, when you have a chord change like that, you're going to want to land on one of the notes of the chord when you get to that measure. So, for example, right here, I'm going to want to do a G. I'm going to make it a half note, and that'll sound good. It'll sound like the chord changes here. And then, of course, right back to the D minor, so I'm going to end up on a D, an F, or an A. It doesn't matter which of the 3 chords or which of the 3 notes that you land on, just as long as it's part of the chord. And then here's this measure, you get the A chord again, and so you have the A, you need to do a C sharp or an E. And so let me just show you one more thing here. If you're going to do a C sharp, you enter it in, it's going to come up as a C natural. If you want it to be a sharp, you either hit the sharp symbol up here in the top corner, or you can actually just hit plus, and it'll become C sharp there. And so what you're going to do, you're going to write this melody out. It's 8 measures long, and you're going to end right here. Then what you're going to do here, you're going to copy paste that melody again. This is the second time, but we're going to repeat it in octaves. And so what I would do is I would add the violins in. So you would copy that melody in here and then paste it again here. But then what you're going to do is you're going to make that one an octave higher. So you would select the measure and then move it up till you get to the next D. Or A and D, and you would be an octave higher. What that does is it keeps making it sound a little bit louder, a little bit stronger. Movie music, if you listen to it, it's very repetitive. It repeats a lot of the same melodies, a lot of the same ideas, a lot. And so we're going to repeat it a second time in octaves. Maybe let the violas rest again. Maybe add in the contrabass. And you can, like I did in the intro, maybe just do some quarter notes on beat 1 or something like that. You could add a little timpani, maybe not too much though. And then we're gonna do that a third time, same thing where you just copy paste, still in octaves, and have all 3 of these parts playing the melody. Have your contrabass playing nice and loudly, and of course add the timpani in. Lastly, and the very last measure, make sure you add a fermata to the notes. Okay, so go to the menu, go to tempo, and then hit fermata right there. That will end your piece. Now I want to show you another version of this. This is actually one of the ones that a student did. He was kind of testing out some of these assignments. And so let's listen to it and see what he did. Melody, and then he's going to repeat it. Does it in octaves. And that's his composition. He did a pretty good job on that one. And so just to point out a couple things here, so he starts with his melody, and then the second time he's repeating it in octaves. So you see how this one starts on the low A, this one starts on the A an octave higher, and then the third time he adds the viola in, as well as the bass, as well as the timpani, to make it that full, big, dramatic sound. So have fun with this composition and do your best. And again, if you want, you can go back and create your own orchestra score and have fun making some movie music of your own.